Chapter 1. A Mother's Vengeance. Dozens of troops prepare for a brutal clash led by Ursa, accompanied by her son Anders. The young man believes everyone will be happy to return home with their hands full of gold, but his mother reminds him they do not fight for riches, but for an immeasurable thirst for revenge. While many are focused on looting and gathering wealth, the true and only objective is to annihilate the cribbage. Before reaching their destination, Ursa asks Anders to swear that if she falls, he will avenge her death. Seconds later, they arrive at the enemy shores, where they are immediately attacked once their presence is detected. Chapter 2. The Valkyrie of the Northern Seas. Soon we discover that Ursa and her warriors have defeated the cribbage. No one remains standing, only one man is left alive. When he sees her, he recognizes her as Ursa, the Valkyrie of the Northern Seas. She demands to know the whereabouts of their leader, Soren, and begins torturing him for answers. Tormented by pain, the man confesses that Soren built a fortress to the east. Since he is no longer useful, Ursa orders Anders to send him to the afterlife. However, the young man, shocked by the scene, hesitates, forcing his mother to finish the task herself. Chapter 3. Shadows from the Past. In the distance, an invisible spaceship hovers unnoticed. Ursa, aware of the horror her son has just witnessed, plans to tell him what happened years ago with his grandfather Einar. One terrible night, the cribbage attacked their village and Soren, in exchange for sparing her life, forced her to kill her own father with her bare hands, an act that ignited the darkness in her heart. Neither Ursa nor Anders notice they are being watched by an apparently invisible creature. The next day they arrive at Soren's temple. Chapter 4. The Blood Path. Only Ursa approaches the front gate, charging at everyone in her way. She uses her shields to eliminate anyone who dares to block her path. Blood spills as she advances. When it seems she will be overwhelmed, her warriors arrive, ready to sacrifice their lives to help her press forward. At last, she reaches the man she has sought for so long. Footsteps appear in the snow, approaching. The Viking leader stands before him. He doesn't recognize her at first, but then sees she is the girl who, in her childhood, killed her own father. He says any brave child would have fought to avenge their father's death and claims that Anders must have felt deeply disappointed in her, as fear paralyzed her. Hearing this truth, Anders reacts. His mother's silence strikes him hard. He steps forward to finish off the enemy himself, but suddenly a shockwave throws him several meters back. Chapter 5. The Invisible Hunter. No one understands what just happened until a colossal creature materializes before them. When they try to attack, the enemy brutally takes them down one by one, effortlessly. Soon, only Ursa and Anders remain. Anders stabs the creature with his spear, noticing its blood is green. The strike does little damage. Sensing the threat, Ursa leaps onto its back to kill it, but is thrown violently by another shockwave, breaking her strongest shield. Dazed, she doesn't realize she's falling off a cliff. She wakes from a painful memory, realizing she's landed in freezing water. Covered in ice, she takes a breath from a trapped air bubble below the surface and sees the terrible creature still in pursuit. Something blurs her vision. It's the predator, already on top of her. Chapter 6. Ice and Iron. In a swift move, Ursa takes one final breath and surfaces, hiding among the frozen wreckage of sunken ships. The predator, frustrated, begins destroying the icy structures where she might be hiding. She keeps moving, changing hiding spots until the perfect moment comes. She grabs a ship's heavy anchor and drops it on the beast. But the impact is not fatal. Realizing this, she breaks the ice beneath the creature to make it fall. However, she also plunges into the water. As she tries to swim up, the monster drags her into the depths. Despite the lack of oxygen, the brave Viking wraps the creature in chains. When it aims its cannon at her, she uses her shield to deflect the blast, driving the beast's head into the sharp edge of the anchor, killing it. Chapter 7. Loss and Captivity. She quickly resurfaces and finds her son gravely wounded. Though he's still breathing, she soon experiences a mother's deepest pain, watching her son die in her arms. Later, Ursa is captured and reduced to a mere prisoner. She wears a metallic collar, just like another mysterious man beside her, Kenji. Chapter 8. The Way of the Samurai. Kenji, an Asian warrior, trained in martial arts since childhood with his brother Kiyoshi, both dreaming of becoming the greatest samurai. They lived in Japan in the year 1609. Their father gave each of them a sharp katana and ordered them to fight, to decide who would become his successor. Kenji lowered his sword, unable to raise it against his own blood. Kiyoshi hesitated at first, but when he saw their father's disappointment, he attacked. Kenji barely defended himself, receiving a cut on his cheek, and a deeper wound to his pride. Feeling betrayed, Kenji fled the temple that night. 20 years later, their father dies and Kiyoshi becomes the heir. Chapter 9. Brotherhood and Betrayal. When the village bells toll, we learn that Kenji spent those years as a farmer. Upon hearing of his father's death, he returns home, preparing his sharpest weapons. Meanwhile, a new predator has arrived on Earth. Watching people nearby, it locks onto a guard near a lake. Kenji, hiding inside a log, ambushes him. Now the Predator marks Kenji as a target and begins to hunt him. Chapter 10, Clash in the Shadows. Kenji moves through the shadows toward his brother, running across the temple rooftops. A guard spots him, but Kenji neutralizes him before he can ring the bell. Despite his stealth, additional watch posts sound the alarm. The guards and Kiyoshi prepare for war. Smoke bombs reduce visibility. Kenji cuts his way through, sparing his brother until they finally face each other. Kiyoshi strikes first with his sharp katana. Though Kenji's blade is inferior, he holds his ground. Final duel. Their fight rages across the temple. Kiyoshi dons the armor their father gave him long ago, stirring resentment in Kenji. But when Kenji gains the upper hand and could strike the final blow, he doesn't. Instead, he mirrors the scar Kiyoshi once gave him, and forgives him. But fate intervenes. Kiyoshi falls into the void. Kenji, paralyzed, sees the painting of their father rip apart, revealing the Predator. It lunges at Kenji, but he escapes, unlocking a door and throwing smoke bombs. Guards confront the beast, which slaughters them with deadly chains. Kenji watches in horror. The Predator vanishes before his eyes and strikes without warning. Forced to flee, Kenji avoids guards and escapes through a window to the temple rooftops. Enemy of two brothers. He calculates every move. When the Predator closes in, he strikes its foot and runs across rooftops, bomb in hand. The blast knocks him into a river, where he finds Kiyoshi still alive and ready to fight again. But Kenji begs for silence. The true enemy approaches. Kiyoshi shoves Kenji away and faces the Predator but is already wounded. Kenji intervenes, battling with everything he has. When the beast grabs Kenji, Kiyoshi saves him from an explosion. Cornered, Kiyoshi sacrifices himself to protect his brother. Kenji, realizing this, distracts the Predator with an explosive hidden in his weapons, launching it into a tree. The brothers fight side by side, finally killing the creature. But Kiyoshi is mortally wounded. In his final moments, they recall childhood phrases, remembering they were never truly alone. Kiyoshi dies. Kenji, now a prisoner, is held alongside Ursa and another man, the Bullet, a soldier. The pilot's dream. We shift to Florida, 1941 during World War II. A young man, John Torres, chases a plane in his old car. When it breaks down, his father, a mechanic, diagnoses the issue. John flooded the engine. While fixing it, John confesses his dream, to become a pilot. But his father, focused on the engine, tells him it's time to grow up. He hands John a military draft letter. His time has come. 1 year later, in the North Atlantic, we see John again, this time repairing a plane. Commander Bundy asks him if it's easier for him to wreck planes than fix them, but Officer Torres counters, asking if he would let him fly it if he can prove it works. Seizing the opportunity, John starts the engine, but it shuts off a few seconds later. Somewhat disappointed, the commander orders him to deal with the issue. When John clarifies that he is not a mechanic but a pilot, the man disagrees, but there's no time to argue. Suddenly, the base comes under attack. The commander immediately gives orders to his men, while John sees one of the wounded describing how some kind of hook latched onto the engines during the attack. Inspecting the damaged aircraft, John can't imagine what kind of device could cause such destruction. Before the commander deploys his team, he asks John to get the engine running. Moments later, while examining it with Delgado, who is visibly shaken, Delgado states they shouldn't even try to understand the nature of this bizarre blade. Nonetheless, John ignores him and tries to access the inside. He uses screwdrivers, a saw, even a blowtorch, but only when heat is applied to the surface does something inside activate. Triggered by the sound of the engine Delgado is igniting. Without time to react, the blade launches toward the plane, narrowly missing Delgado. Another part of the device is connected to a chain that shoots out from the ship, tearing off the aircraft's propeller. Meanwhile, other pilots engage in air combat against enemy planes, using all their arsenal without realizing a ship watches them from above, hidden by a technology they do not understand. John is aware something else is in the skies and tries to warn the pilots to be cautious, or return to base. However, they don't take him seriously and explain they can't communicate with them anyway as they're out of range. There are no pilots available to act as messengers since everyone is already airborne. Still, Torres believes in his own abilities and knows he can fly a plane to deliver the warning himself. As he suspects, an unknown enemy lurks among the clouds and Commander Bundy is now in its sights. Although Delgado tries to stop him, pointing out the plane barely works, Torres, aware of the danger, asks for a minute to listen closely to the engine. He applies the same technique he learned from his father and checks every aircraft function. Once confirmed, Delgado activates the thruster, launching the plane from the base. At first, John realizes the aircraft won't lift, but after one last maneuver, he manages to ascend into the clouds, even if Delgado believes his friend won't return. Moments later, as the commander's troops thin out enemy lines, John reaches them and warns they must retreat or be annihilated. However, the commander orders him back, reminding him this is a war zone and dismissing his warnings. Another superior also tries to make him retreat after noticing how recklessly he's approaching the crossfire. At that moment, a strange chain pierces the armor of a plane, reaches the engine and destroys it from a distance, something no one expected. When John insists they must not engage this enemy, the commander reminds him he has no authority to issue orders. But shortly after, several soldiers crash midair against a spaceship that had been invisible due to cloaking technology. This massive enemy vessel, piloted by another predator, begins circling the aircraft. Guided by the heat of their engines, it moves faster than any warplane. Despite the pilot's efforts to avoid the hunter's gaze, their attempts are in vain. No matter how hard they try to dodge it, the predator's weapon strikes with perfect precision. The commander, sensing the increasing threat, begs John to activate the plane's weapons, but when he tries, the lever breaks. They are forced to improvise as their comrades are brutally slaughtered. Soon, one of the wings of John's plane catches fire. He sets up an improvised autopilot to climb out onto the wing and fix the issue, but the aircraft lacks stability and begins spiraling. He holds on with all his strength to avoid falling. While trying to manually redirect the plane's path, he spots the enemy vessel approaching. Another pilot briefly distracts the enemy. Initially avoiding its attacks, the pilot is soon taken down with equal violence. Meanwhile, John continues struggling to get rid of the burning debris. Once he succeeds, he realizes the enemy isn't targeting ships by shape, but by the heat of their engines. Now, only John and Commander Bundy remain in the air, fully aware no reinforcements are coming. The commander listens intently to John's plan. They must ascend as high as possible to cool the engines. As predicted, the enemy ship begins following them. Still, the commander knows they need more time. He asks John to handle the bastard chasing them. Then, on the Predator's radar, John's plane vanishes. He has turned off the engine. The commander, in a sacrificial move, allows himself to be struck so that John may survive. He dies instantly, but his sacrifice allows the plan to work. Invisible to the enemy, John lets his plane fall back toward the base, undetected, and targets what he believes to be the Predator ship's thruster, hoping to destabilize it. The enemy vessel stops midair when it realizes it's under attack. John is forced to reveal his position by reigniting his engine. With no other option, he flies into the nearest city streets, luring the enemy into the heart of the conflict, where gunfire continues non-stop. Thanks to the ongoing firefight, the Predator's ship takes damage and crashes into the ocean's depths. John celebrates his apparent victory, feeling invincible, unaware that his opponent, though submerged, has returned for the final blow. As expected, the young man scrambles for a way to fight back. Upon seeing a photo of his father, he gets an idea: flood the plane's engine. He quickly forces the aircraft, escaping moments before it's dragged back and the engine crashes into the Predator's cockpit, killing the alien once and for all. That same night, while repairing the engine of an old car, the ground begins to shake without warning. Sensing danger, John grabs a weapon and heads into the street to investigate. At first he sees no one, but then senses he's not alone. A ship, even larger than the one he faced earlier, descends to capture him. Sometime later, impossible to determine how long, John wakes up inside a strange chamber, not knowing how much time has passed. Dazed and disoriented, he isn't surprised to see one of those aliens appear before him. They soon place a collar on him and lock him inside the same prison as Ursa and Kenji, who were also confined in cryogenic chambers, allowing them to survive for years. John is relieved to see other humans, but when he tries to speak with the Viking woman, she doesn't understand him. They come from different eras. Approaching Kenji, he realizes he's Japanese and tries to communicate using his limited knowledge of the language. He barely manages to introduce himself, but it's enough for Kenji to understand they may die here. John, determined, starts thinking of a solution, but there's no time. They're quickly forced to appear in what seems to be an immense alien stadium, filled with unknown creatures watching them closely. John realizes they're no longer on Earth. He tries to explain this to the others, but none of them understand. The Predator leader's ship descends into the arena. In a strange language, it speaks to the prisoners. However, thanks to the collars on their necks, acting as translators, they understand the message. The Predator informs them they must fight in a brutal death match, and only the last one standing will earn the right to face him. Then, two of the aliens force one of their own to demonstrate what happens if they disobey. They place a similar collar on him, and with the press of a button, his head explodes. Each protagonist is then given a culturally significant weapon. Kenji receives a sharp katana, Ursa is handed the finest axe, and John receives a strange relic that doesn't belong to his era. Suddenly, the Viking woman charges at him. John tries to shoot, but his weapon doesn't work. He tries to reason with her, but all efforts fail. Just as Ursa is about to strike, Kenji intervenes, using his sword to save John. Ursa sees this as a challenge and turns on the ninja, but Kenji shows no intention to fight her. He tries to explain that he and his brother once defeated one of these demons by working together. Seeing a chance, John proposes that if they reach the top, where the Predator leader waits, they might survive as long as they let him pilot the ship. But Ursa doesn't understand and declares she'll kill the king after killing them both. Kenji insists on reasoning with her and warns John not to fight her. John misinterprets the warning and clumsily lunges at Ursa, trying to stop her. Once again, Kenji intervenes, saving him. Seeing the crowd grow bored, the Predator leader changes the rules. John desperately tries to understand how his weapon works while Ursa and Kenji fight. Ursa, brutal by nature, clashes with Kenji, who uses agility to avoid direct combat. Then John realizes the aliens are unleashing a monstrous beast to spice up the match. He searches desperately for bullets, and just as Ursa is about to wound Kenji, he shoots her axe to stop her. The shot transports Ursa mentally to the day she lost her son Anders, whom she briefly confuses with John. The pilot pleads with them to realize that even if one wins, none will truly escape. He begs them to unite against the real enemy, but the monster devours him instantly. Devastated, believing her son is lost again, Ursa attacks the beast with fury. Meanwhile, we discover John is still alive inside the monster, trying to destroy it from within. Severely injured, Kenji crawls toward his sword while Ursa, overwhelmed, is forced to retreat. At that moment, John uses a weapon from a previously devoured guard and begins to wound the beast from the inside. Ursa grabs something resembling a shield, and together with Kenji approaches the monster. Kenji strikes its eyes while Ursa slices open the abdomen, right where John survives. Together they land the final blow. But as the body is removed from the battlefield, no one suspects that the human still lives inside. Kenji tries to show Ursa the power they could wield if united. But she, also blinded by grief for the young man she saw as her son, begs him to promise he'll tell the others she'll join them soon. Thus, the two warriors from different times engage in a brutal fight, as Ursa gives Kenji no choice. When he finally corners her, she begs him to kill her so she can reunite with Anders in Valhalla. However, remembering that only one may survive, the ninja lowers his blade and refuses to continue the fight. But Ursa attacks without mercy. Kenji is not ready to die, he will not fight under unjust rules. The Predator King then intervenes, declaring that both of them will perish. Ursa tries to provoke Kenji into continuing the fight, but as he persists in his refusal, the leader activates the collars that will send them to the afterlife. Just as they prepare to face their fate, John reappears in a small ship and with precise control, manages to deactivate all the collars. With no time to lose, they launch at full speed toward the leader, who quickly overpowers them once more. Ursa, consumed by revenge over the death of her son, attempts to charge at him, but the battle becomes unbalanced. The humans, aware of their inferiority, decide to coordinate their efforts, and only then do both warriors manage to inflict deep wounds on the Predator leader. Meanwhile, John takes advantage of the distraction to approach the control center and attempts to activate the ship. Time is running against him, the humans begin to fall once again under the enemy's power, and just when they seem on the verge of defeat, John manages to power up the ship, distracting the Predator long enough for him to fall. With all her strength, Ursa prevents Kenji from falling, and together they help each other board the ship. However, during the clash, the Predator leader attacks with his spear, managing to tear off the ninja's arm. With no other choice, John succeeds in taking off in the spaceship, although the aliens are quick to anchor them again using one of their chains. Upon realizing they can't break free, Ursa pleads with her companions not to try to avenge her death. Without hesitation, she launches herself headfirst against the Predators, attempting to destroy with her shield the device that keeps them captive, successfully allowing the other humans to flee the area. The Viking woman mocks the Predator King, confident that nothing he has done was enough to destroy her. Now her sons, referring to Anders and John, have managed to escape and find safety. However, for the Predator King, the hunt is only beginning. With a simple gesture, he sends all his ships to capture the humans who dared to humiliate him. Once again, Ursa is confined inside a cryogenic chamber for several more years. At that moment, we discover that these aliens keep thousands of creatures from various species imprisoned for their own amusement. Among them, Naru, asleep since the year 1719.